Good morning. Welcome to Unity of Charlotte. My name is Reverend Pat Dre, and I feel blessed that you could join us today. We are all blessed that you are here and that you remembered to turn your clock. Good for you. Good for you. Yes. And the sun was shining bright. It was a little chilly, but we were warmed by the sun, and we are here. We are fully here. Unity of Charlotte is a nurturing church that nurtures a deep and mature understanding of God through the practice of unity principles. Simply put, we are here to love, to grow, and to serve. We believe as a spiritual community, this enhances our experience of life, making it richer, deeper, and more expanded. And I know this to be true because I too am a member here, and I've been thriving ever since I joined. I want to remind you all we have a wonderful youth program, so if you have some young ones or some older young ones, have them join. I always bring my grandchildren when they are with me. It's a wonderful program. If you're joining us for the first time today, we want to welcome you and remind you to get information from the people who are wearing blue ribbons. They can fill you in on anything you need to know, show you where the restrooms are, and tell you some of our upcoming events and make you feel fully welcome and comfortable here at Unity of Charlotte. If you're in need of spiritual support, we have a prayer box outside, and I urge you, if you need just a little boost in your life anywhere, please put a prayer request in. I head up the prayer ministry, and we would be delighted to pray for you. And it doesn't have to be a crisis. Isn't that wonderful? It can just be that you got up this morning and you had a brilliant idea and you said, yes, and the universe backs me. We help the universe by answering prayer requests. We're part of the support team for the universe, okay? And for you as well. All right. You can also place a prayer request by going online. We get a lot of requests that way. So I urge you or tell your neighbors, friends, or acquaintances to use that online because it's such an easy method to use. Close your eyes softly. Get yourself comfortable for a moment. And take a deep breath and let it go. I know that there is one and only one. And this truth anchors me in my life because I am made of the very same stuff. God DNA runs through me. And this changes everything. And breathing in, I take in this truth, knowing that my life is forever blessed as an individuation of the one. I express brightly and in a profound and lovely manner in this time on this plane. And I get to be me. I get to be me with a capital M. And as I look around the world today in its bright and shiny way that it showed up this morning, I know that the power of the beloved lies within me. And all I have to do is acknowledge it, know it, and smile. And from this place of knowing and smiling, I know that I get to welcome all the wonderful events of this day, good and more good. And I resist nothing, for I have no need to. From a place of love, I am open, willing, and expecting the good. And from that place, I say yes, yes, yes. There is no need for resistance. I simply let it go and welcome this day in its fullness. All of this brings me to a place of deepest gratitude. Grateful for my life, grateful for my understanding of who I really am, grateful for this day, grateful for this service, and grateful for the message. And from this place of willingness and gratitude, I release this beautiful idea, knowing it's already taken care of for me and for all around me. And knowing that this is my truth today, join with me in saying, and so it is. Amen.
So I invite you to close your eyes as we move into that inner space. Think upon these words. God. God. God is. God is. God is all. God is all. God is all there. God is all there. God is all there is. God is all there is. And so we rest in the knowledge this morning that each of us is in our perfect right place, that God is guiding and directing every step that we take, that we are on the perfect path, the perfect journey for our soul's evolvement, and that each one of us has something special to give back to this world. And so we simply let go and know that all is well, all is unfolding perfectly, all is God. And we let it be so. And together we say, and so it is. Amen. So today my talk is about resisting. Now I know there's probably nobody in this room that resists, right? Am I the only one that might happen to every now and then? Where we get to the point where we just go, I can't resist any longer. I just have to surrender. That's the point I want to talk about today. Because I think too many times, I'll speak for myself, because every minister, everybody who does a talk up here, we're only speaking to ourselves, right? You happen to be along for the ride. And so many people will come up to me afterwards and go, that's just what I needed to hear. Because what I'm experiencing is life, right? And so when I get to that place where I think I know how the universe should unfold, because of course I know what's best for everything, everyone, including myself, and when I have circumstances that happen that are not along the lines of what I thought was supposed to happen, I get a little frustrated. Anybody with me on that? Just a time or two? And so I love this quote from Chuck Yeager. Do you know Chuck Yeager? He's a test pilot. He did incredible things where he broke the sound barrier back when they didn't even know what was going to happen. They were just like, let's just fly as fast as we can and see what happens. And I love this quote from him. He says, just before I broke the sound barrier, that's when the cockpit shook the most. And he said he realized all of that vibration, all of that shaking, that was simply the prelude to boom. He was through the sound barrier, and he was able to understand that simply was what it took to get there. Isn't that a fabulous allegory for sometimes when we get in our experience of life? Sometimes our life is shaking more than we want it to shake, and yet we don't know how close we are to the breakthrough on the other side. And so I want to live like Chuck Yeager and know that I can put up with a little bit of shaking. I have the resilience, I have the perseverance to get through the shaking, to get through to the breakthrough. Anybody with me on that? And so you and I have an incredible capability sometimes to see beyond what our physical eyes can see and see with our spiritual eyes, there's something more here. There is something more that I can't quite see yet in the physical manifestation, but I know if I keep my eyes on the prize, something will come through. Unless I start to resist. Unless I start to go, wait a minute, I got to fix this. So I love this wonderful book, Working with the Law by Raymond Hollowell. Every chapter is a law of the universe, the spiritual laws, and there's a complete chapter on the law of non-resistance. And basically what he is saying is this, that when we come up to an obstacle in our lives, it doesn't work to fight against it. What it does, what we should be doing, is finding a way around it, or just acknowledging it and moving on. This is what Raymond says. If a man resists a situation, and he's using man in the overall arching humanity term, he will always have it with him. If he tries to run away from it, like a shadow, it follows him, and repeatedly he will meet it again. Have you ever had a situation show up in different people? The same problem, the same challenge, just different people, or different geography? I've used geography to run from problems before. That did not work. It showed up where I was. Who was the common denominator? Me. If he ignores the hardness of the condition and fearlessly works around it, he will find a time when that hard condition will have been absorbed and removed. Accept the condition as some evidence of good. Look for that good, and by being acceptable to it, more and more evidence of it appears. Emma Curtis Hopkins had a wonderful saying. She would say, I demand to see the good in this. I demand to see the good in this. And she used God and good interchangeably because she said God is good and good is God. So when we demand to see the good, despite the challenge, despite the fear that rises up in us of the certain circumstance, that's when we get to really prove who we are, right? It's easy being a spiritual being in this world when everything's just la-di-da-di-da. The real challenge is when we come up against these situations where we get to know what we know, right? How do you know what you believe until you experience something? There's a difference between knowing and doing. Knowing and experiencing. Knowing and modeling spiritual behavior. That's what he's talking about here. Agree with thy adversary. Have you heard that phrase? Is another way of saying that nothing worthwhile and lasting is ever gained by argument. He who is convinced against his will of the same opinion still. To disagree with one only causes that one to put on his full armor, to collect his full force in opposition to yours. To agree with a worthy opponent leaves him defenseless and without need of his armament. So when we come up against someone that is solid in what they're saying and how they're approaching you about a certain situation, I have found it's much better to diffuse it and go, you might be right. You might be right. And because we can all find a common ground, right? Agree with thy adversary. And I love this one. Blessed are the meek. I've always had a problem with that. I've always had blessed are the meek. It says, it may seem literally to support those kindly, timid souls who are an easy prey for their more aggressive brothers. Rather, it refers to the one who is able to follow the law of non-resistance to the point of inheriting the earth and all things thereof. To be meek does not mean to be an easy mark, nor to be a doormat for anyone to walk over. I have heard it said in this day one cannot be a real new thought person and be easy and forgiving. In this day, one must be on guard to protect one's right from being overridden. But, it is not the truth to be able to speak out in opposition. He said, we need not be an easy mark nor a doormat for anyone, but there is a greater power to be reckoned with for the power of the law when you use it. it makes you the master. It makes you the master. Our rights will uphold themselves. They are their own defense. I remember Joe Goldsmith talking about how you should never take anyone to court. Now, I'm guessing there's times when you have to do that, but he said, for the most part, if you have a grudge with your neighbor, don't go to the courts. That is not the way. That's the ultimate of resisting not. When we are totally saying, you know what, I'm just going to let that be, and I'm going to know the highest truth about this. I know that God is in this. God is in this. That takes a master's mind, doesn't it? That's the mystic way. And too many times I find myself getting caught up in the human way. I don't want to be downtrodden. I don't want to be stepped on. I don't want to be taken advantage of. And I totally forget that that's not possible. I totally forget that that's not, I'm always at free choice, and I have the capability to say, wait a minute, how would God handle this? How would a master handle this? That's where I want to be. I want to be working with the law of non-resistance. I want to be working with all of the spiritual laws. In Matthew 5, Jesus says, I think I might have skipped one here, the law of non-resistance. In Matthew 5, Jesus says, resist not evil. What does he mean by that? See, the great teachers have left these way showers so that we understand how to live in this world. Here's the metaphysical meaning of that statement. This comes from The Power of Awareness by Neville Goddard, who is one of the giants of New Thought in the last century. He said there's a great difference between resisting evil and renouncing it. When you resist evil, you give it your attention. You continue to make it real. When you renounce evil, you take your attention from it and give your attention to what you want. Do you see the difference? It's a huge difference rather than saying, this is what I don't want. And trust me, everybody that comes into my office for prayer usually knows exactly what they don't want. And they'll tell me with great detail what I don't want. And then when I say, what do you want? They're much less clear about that. So this is what the secret of what Jesus was telling. Resist not evil. Don't look at what you don't want. What is it that you do want? And then put your energy and focus into that. Does that make sense? You and I have great power. And unfortunately, I forget that. And sometimes it lies fallow within me because I'm not using it. Or I'm using it the other end of it. I'm using it to create more problems in my life, more difficulty, because that's what I'm focusing on. If I'm focusing on, I can't pay my bills, guess what's I'm going to get more of? I can't pay my bills. I remember a minister talking about how he was working on his prosperity consciousness. And at the time, he was in college, so he was young, and he thought, you know what? I'm going to sell some pot, because I see people making money doing that. So he starts selling pot, and he's making money. Well, what you put your attention onto is what expands, right? So he started getting a whole lot more pot into his life. Not as much money, but a whole lot more pot into his life. And he realized, I'm focusing on the wrong thing. It's time for me to energetically put my attention where I really want it. That I am a vessel of God. That I am a prosperity being. That it's flowing to me and through me. And it's up to me to obliterate any blocks that are there. Are you with me? It's up to me to figure out, how am I blocking my good? Because God is good. There's always good coming to me and through me. There's a wonderful story about a donkey falling into an abandoned well. So the donkey's way down, and it's 12, 15 feet down. The farmer comes upon it and sees that the donkey's down there, and he's like, I have no way to get this donkey out. The donkey's old. I may as well just bury him in there. So he starts taking his shovel and starts, putting dirt down the well. And the donkey sees the dirt coming down. He realizes, this is not good. So he starts braying and starts, really making a fuss. And then he realizes, as the dirt keeps coming down, he just shook it off of his body and he took a step. And more dirt comes down. He shook it off his body. He took a step because the dirt was now making it possible slowly for him to get up to that top of the well, and then he trotted off very happily. When we are focused on, oh my God, what's happening? How do I get out of this? It sometimes prevents us from seeing the way that's always there. And so I love that story because too many times I've been braying like a donkey about my situation, and all the time it was simply giving me opportunities to step up to a new level of experience, to step up to a new level of spiritual maturity that I hadn't experienced before. So shake it off, and don't look at that which you do not want to experience. A couple of weeks ago, we had a really strong winds come through where I live, and the trees were bending, and it was really magnificent to watch from inside. Thankfully, I was not outside in it. And then the next day, I went out, and there were lots of branches down and leaves and things like that, and I realized this was simply nature's way of pruning some of the older branches, the dead branches. And the trees simply said, okay, I'll grow a new one. You take this one, I'll grow a new one. And nature is always pruning itself, is it not? It's allowing itself to regenerate. There's also pruning that needs to happen in our minds. This is the time of year we start thinking about gardening, right? We start thinking about what are we going to plant and how are we going to keep those pesky weeds out of the garden. I'd like you to think about pruning your mind. What weeds have been growing in your mind for far too long? What weeds keep popping up, and even though you pull them out, they keep popping back up again? Back to the power of awareness. Neville Goddard says, just as the vine is pruned by cutting away its useless branches and roots, prune your imagination by withdrawing your attention from all unlovely and destructive ideas and concentrating on the ideal you wish to attain. This sounds so easy, doesn't it? It is one of the hardest things I think we as spiritual seekers try to do, is to maintain our idea, because the world keeps spewing sometimes unlovely thoughts to us, does it not? There's plenty of drama out there. Everything from politics to who the bachelor is going to marry. You know, there's all kinds of drama that we can tune into. What are we focusing our attention on? What are we giving our attention to? That's the whole point here. And how can we prune some of those ideas? Eric Butterworth, have you read any of his wonderful books? Eric Butterworth was a Unity minister in the New York City area for many years. He was one of the giants of our movement. He told a story about how he was flying once. He was flying from the west, and the flight was being transferred to Chicago, but it was suddenly canceled. And in fact, 2 other flights to Chicago in that same airport were canceled. Well, that left 3 airplanes full of people really mad because now they're trying to figure out, how do I get to Chicago? So hundreds of people were milling around. They were complaining to the airport people, the airline people. They were just really frustrated because they just wanted to get home or wanted to get to wherever they were going. So Eric Butterworth is watching all of this, and he, in the midst of all of this, because he was frustrated too, he wanted to get home, he remembered a saying by Edwin Markham that had often helped him, and that saying was this: when you are the hammer, strike. When you are the anvil, bear. Now, in other words, if there's something that you can do to make the situation better, do it with all your might. Do it with excellence, with all your being. But if there's nothing you can do, just relax. If there's nothing you can do, bear. If there's nothing you can do, just let it go. So he became aware of another guy, the only other guy in these hundreds of people who are just royally mad and trying to figure out, how they're going to get home. But he sees this other guy who's sitting there very calmly. He was the only one besides Eric Butterworth who was calm. So he went and he sat down next to him, struck up a conversation. And he said, "How can you be so serene and calm?" to this man. And the man said, "Oh, I haven't always been this way. But you see, I spent a year in a sanitarium, and I had things that I had to sort out. It was a great growth experience, during which I made a covenant with the flow of life within me. And I learned that the goal in life is to let God express at all times, regardless of circumstances. And I've resolved never to let things that happen around me or to me overshadow the dynamic presence of God within me." Isn't that fabulous? I found that outer things always come to pass, and it came to pass. It didn't stay there. We didn't stay and build a condo. We just let it pass. But the inner power, he says, goes on forever. So Eric Butterworth and this man, who is clearly very spiritual, had a wonderful conversation. And finally, there's an announcement over the loudspeaker. "Ladies and gentlemen, we only have one plane that will be able to go to Chicago. The other two planes have mechanical difficulties. We're very sorry. We're trying to reroute, get another plane in here. But right now, we only have one plane." Now, there's 3 airplanes full of people who all want to be on that one plane. So they said, "We're going to have a lottery, a drawing, to see who goes on this plane." The first name called was the man who was sitting next to Eric Butterworth. The second name called was Eric Butterworth. They were able to get on the plane. They were calm. They were relaxed. They turned it over to God. They were able to bear. And because of that, Eric Butterworth had a fabulous lesson. It was a great lesson in just letting go and letting God. A friend of mine was telling me how his wife would quote Mother Teresa to their children whenever they would get upset, when the children would get upset about something that was beyond their control. And this is what the quote she would use. "People will say and do many things. Mine is to smile and do my work." Mine is to smile and do my work. And this is a woman who worked in the slums of Calcutta. This is a woman who worked with the most desperate of people who were ill and dying. This is a woman who just kept saying, "I'm here to serve. How can I serve?" That's one of my favorite songs that y'all sang. How can I serve today, sweet spirit? I love this statement too. When we help, we see life as weak. When we fix, we see life as broken. When we serve, we see life as whole. Helping and fixing is the work of the ego. Serving is the work of the soul. That's the non-resistance. The law of non-resistance is simply telling us when we are here to express God, very few times does that happen when we are in total frustration, resentment, anger, or the ever sacred word, pissosity of life. When we are just so fed up with life, that does not allow us to shine as we are meant to shine. When we are in that space of, you know what? I know God's got this, and I know good is coming out of this. As Emma Curtis Hopkins said, I demand to see the good in this. It's amazing how that can totally shift our perspective, and all of a sudden we see something we never saw before. Wait a minute. That could be the way out. That could be the way through. That could be simply the obstacle that is helping me versus stopping me. I'm going to end with a quote. I think I might have shared this before, but it fits here so well with our non-resistance. It's from Senator Cory Booker. He says, when they criticize you, love them for teaching you humility. When they heap scorn upon you, love them for helping you discover your resiliency. When they doubt you, love them for giving your dreams greater courage. When they point out your faults, love them for their accuracy. You're right. You're right. When they wound you, love them for showing you your capacity to forgive. when they try to stop you. Love them for making your resolve even stronger. When they cast you into darkness, love them for helping you discover your inextinguishable light. And when you stand victorious, when your love has conquered the impossible challenge, invite them to stand with you so that they too can see love's power and possibility. Now that's a spiritual master. That's someone who knows. It's not what happens to you, folks. It's how you handle what happens to you. It's how you address, if we really, really believe this stuff, we don't do it part-time. We're not part-time people. We're full-time, fully on. My life is the model. Gandhi's autobiography was my life as an experiment. And that's what we want to be, is a living, working model of what these principles are. I'm nothing if I stand up here and talk about something and I'm not doing it. And so I invite you this week, what needs pruning in your mind? What maybe has been coming up lately that you know you shouldn't be giving your time and energy to, and you keep focusing on that versus where's the good in this? Where's the God in this? We have an incredible amount of power. It's always there. It's our choice, whether it's here or latent. Here, I'm shining. Here, not so much. So, this week, who'd like to shine with me? All right. We're going to shine on, because that's who we are as spiritual beings. Totally available to be the light no matter what is happening in our world. If something is happening that you're going, wait a minute, this is not the challenge that I want to deal with today, maybe Spirit placed that challenge right there for you so that you could be the light in your workplace, in your whatever, in your family. Many of us grew up in families that we sometimes feel like we were dropped in, like an alien dropped us in. And we wonder, how the heck did we end up in that family? Maybe we were there to be the light. Maybe we were there to be the gift that only we could give that family. And maybe, just maybe, where you are in your life is perfect right now. The law of non-resistance. Let's take that within. Oh, Father, Mother God, we're just so grateful. Grateful for the opportunity to be the blessing in the world today. To be the light that shines so brilliantly. To be that serenity. To know that when we are here to live a life of spiritual mastery, that means upping our game every moment of every day. And so I bless this path that I'm on. I bless each and every individual in here, even if they're facing an incredible difficulty in their life. I know that God is in it. I know that there is something that is growing them to a greater experience that they've ever done before. And so I bless each and every person here who has said yes to a greater level of beingness, a greater level of experiencing the God within them. I know that all of us are moving forward with joy and with great expectation that God is leading us, directing us, guiding us, and showing us the path each and every step of the way. And so I let go, knowing that as I have declared these words, they are done, that we are always that close to our breakthrough. So we hold on, we persevere, we don't let go, and we know that God is always, always our silent partner. So we simply let it be so, and together we say, and so it is. Amen.